The wind tore across the ridges like a living thing, screaming and clawing at every exposed surface. Snow lashed the rescuers' faces, turning their breaths into sharp clouds of white. Each step Lucas took felt heavier than the last, his boots sinking deep into the powder, the crunch echoing in the otherwise devouring silence of the storm. The mountain was merciless tonight, and yet they pressed on. Driven by a fragile thread of hope, the men fumbled with their radios, pressing numb fingers against the frozen buttons, only to be met with the cruel hiss of static. Nothing. One muttered, his voice swallowed instantly by the wind. Their flares had failed, their maps were useless, and the avalanche had buried every familiar path, yet none of them turned back. Somewhere out here, 3 young skiers lay lost or worse, and the longer they waited, the smaller their chance of survival became. Lucas's chest burned as he fought for air, his mind battling shadows darker than the storm. He could still see the face of the boy he hadn't reached in time, years ago. That memory clung to him like ice against skin, whispering that he would fail again. He gritted his teeth, forcing his legs to move. Not this time, he thought. Not tonight. He would rather collapse on this mountain than return empty-handed. Through the storm's chaos, Rex was alive with focus. His ears twitched, his nose lifted. His body coiled like a spring ready to release. He tugged against Lucas's grip, paws pounding into the snow with purpose. To the team, the storm was a wall of blindness. To Rex, it was a veil hiding a truth only he could sense. His low growl vibrated against the leash, a warning or perhaps a discovery. "Easy, boy," Lucas muttered, his hand tightening. His voice was steady, but doubt gnawed at him. He'd trusted instinct before his own, and it had led him into ruin. Could he surrender to the instincts of an animal now, when lives were on the line? Around him, the others glanced nervously, waiting for Lucas's decision. The mountain demanded certainty, but all Lucas felt was the pull of fear and faith at war inside him. The sound cut through the storm, like a flare in the dark, sharp, urgent, and gone too quickly. Lucas froze, his breath caught in his throat. Rex barked again, louder this time, pulling with all his strength toward the abyss of snow ahead. Lucas's heart pounded. Was it salvation calling them forward, or was the mountain playing tricks with his hope? With nothing else to guide them, Lucas knew he had to choose, resist the dog or follow him into the void. The rescuers froze, their boots sinking into the ridge's brittle crust of ice. Before them stretched nothing but a world erased, no trails, only a blank, merciless expanse. For a moment, no one moved. Breath fogged the air like ghosts, and the silence pressed against them heavier than the storm itself. Wavered in their chests, fragile as a candle flickering in the wind. One by one, they pressed their radios closer to numb ears, straining for even a flicker of human voice. All that came back was the hollow hiss of static, a cruel reminder that they were alone in the mountains. Lucas gritted his teeth. The lifeline of their mission communication was gone. He glanced at the others, reading the despair in their eyes. The mountain had stolen their signal, their map, their certainty. Out of the void, Rex stiffened. His ears cut through the storm's howl, sharp and alert. Then came the sound, his bark, sharp and commanding, shattering the stillness. It was not random. It carried purpose, like a flare against the night. He pulled against the leash, muscles tense, eyes locked on the invisible distance. Lucas's pulse quickened. To Rex, something was there, something human, something alive. leash strained in Lucas's grip, his gut twisted with conflict. Could he risk the team on a hunch? The storm had fooled men before, leading them into endless spirals of snow and silence. But another memory stabbed through his doubt. The night Rex had saved a lost child, guiding them to a body barely clinging to life. Logic had failed then. Instinct had not. Lucas's breath trembled as he muttered, half to himself, half to Rex, "Are you certain, boy?" At last he gave in. "We follow him," Lucas ordered, voice hoarse yet resolute. With Rex at the lead, the team lurched downward into the storm. Each step was treacherous, swallowed by drifts that bit at their knees. The wind howled like a living beast, drowning out all but the crunch of boots and Rex's urgent tugging. Every movement was a gamble salvation could wait below or death. Then, as if struck by lightning, Rex halted. He dropped to the ground, paws striking, claws ripping at the snow in a fevered rhythm. Lucas stumbled to his side, heart hammering. Snow flew until, at last, something broke through the whiter small scrap of cloth, bright blue against the bleakness. A scarf, torn, buried, but undeniable. Lucas snatched the fabric, his hands trembling even as the storm froze his skin. His eyes widened, his chest tightening with a surge of disbelieved hope. The scarf was real. Rex's instincts had cut through the void where man's tools had failed. He looked at his partner, snow clinging to the shepherd's muzzle. "Good boy, oh God, good boy," Lucas whispered, voice cracking. For the first time since the search began, hope burned brighter than fear. The storm roared like a living beast, swallowing every sound, every step. Rex pushed forward, his fur slicked with snow, head bowed against the wind. Yet, every few strides, he stopped, turning back, golden eyes locking with Lucas, as if asking, "Are you with me?" Lucas tightened his scarf and forced his boots through the drifts, each step an anchor in the blinding void. He had followed maps, compasses, and training manuals before, but never a dog's instinct. Still, something in Rex's steady pause, his silent promise not to leave Lucas behind, kept him moving. Trust was not given easily in a storm like this, but in Rex's calm rhythm, Lucas felt the faint stir of something he thought he'd lost hope. The ice struck without warning. Lucas's boots slid, his body lurching sideways into the snow with a grunt. Pain shot up his shoulder as his pack dragged him down. For a moment he stayed there, chest heaving, breath frosting the air. In panicked bursts, then came a weight at his side. Rex, the dog, had pressed close, firm and immovable, bracing him like a living pillar. Lucas's gloved hands dug into the snow, and slowly, painfully, he rose. You wouldn't leave me, huh?" Lucas whispered hoarsely, half to himself. Rex's ears twitched at the sound. The dog did not move until Lucas stood steady. In that silence, loyalty spoke louder than words. They paused under a rocky ledge, shielded for a moment from the worst of the wind. Lucas struck a flare, the red light flickering wildly against the snow. Rex limped closer, paws stiff from the cold. Without hesitation, Lucas reached for him. He cupped Rex's paws in his gloved hands, pulling them near the flare's warmth. For a soldier, a rescuer hardened by failure, it was a startlingly tender act. Rex's body trembled, but his eyes softened, resting on Lucas as if recognizing a bond that went deeper than survival. For the first time since the storm began, Lucas felt warmth not just from the flame, but from the silent understanding passing. Between them, the wind shifted, revealing something jutting from a snowbank. Lucas's breath caught as he brushed the frost away. A ski pole snapped in two, and a lone glove. His chest tightened, evidence of life, but also of struggle. He stared at the objects, his throat closing. These belonged to someone they were too late to save, or someone still waiting beneath the ice. Behind him, Rex lowered his nose to the snow, tail stiff with concentration. His steady movements reminded Lucas. Despair could wait. Action could not. Lucas gripped the broken pole, forcing his hands to stop shaking. "Come on, boy," he whispered. "Show me the rest." The glove in his hand became another hand in his memory pail, lifeless, pulled too late from the snow years ago. Lucas's breath grew ragged. His failure then had carved scars too deep for words. What if it happens again? What if I lead them all into another grave? The storm hissed around him like voices of accusation. He clenched his fists, ready to surrender to the guilt. But then Rex nudged him gently, breaking through the fog of memory. The dog's calm presence anchored him. Lucas exhaled, shaky but determined. If Rex hadn't given up on him, maybe he shouldn't give up on himself either. Rex lunged forward suddenly, digging with powerful paws, snow flying in frantic bursts. The team rushed closer, hearts pounding. Lucas's pulse racing. This could be it. But beneath the snow lay nothing but twisted branches, brittle and lifeless. The weight of disappointment pressed hard, threatening to crush Lucas's fragile resolve. He cursed under his breath, turning away until he felt Rex's eyes on him. The dog stood still now, his gaze unwavering, patient, almost human in its quiet reassurance. It was as if Rex was saying, "Not here, but close. Don't stop now." For the first time, Lucas chose to believe the look. Rex froze, ears high, body tense. Then came the bark, sharp, urgent, cutting through the storm like a warning bell. He sprang back, gaze fixed on the looming slope above. Lucas didn't hesitate. "Move, now," he roared, his voice cracking with urgency. The team scrambled just as the mountain gave way. Snow thundered down in a deafening roar, swallowing the ridge where they had stood seconds before. White chaos engulfed the world, a furious avalanche tearing at everything in its path. When the noise faded, they were breathless, shaking, but alive. Lucas looked at Rex, chest pounding. "You saved us." His voice broke, not from cold, but from awe. The storm had not calmed, but something within Lucas had. Kneeling in the snow, he reached for Rex, resting a trembling hand against the dog's damp fur. "Not just them," Lucas whispered softly, almost to himself. "You're saving me too." Rex leaned into the touch, his steady presence radiating. A strength Lucas hadn't felt in years. Each moment with the dog peeled back the layers of guilt, showing him a different truth. Survival wasn't just about finding others, it was about finding himself again. As he rose, Lucas's eyes burned with renewed determination. This was no longer just a mission. It was a bond, fragile but unbreakable, carrying them both forward into the storm. The mountains swallowed the last traces of daylight. Wind clawed at the rescuers' faces, erasing their footprints faster than they could make them. Lucas tightened his scarf, but it did little to keep the biting cold from sinking into his chest. Around him, the team's silence grew heavier. Every flare they lit flickered against the storm's fury, a fragile ember of hope beaten down by endless snow. Doubt pressed hard. Had they come too late? Lucas glanced at Rex, whose body remained taut, ears forward, eyes locked ahead, as if the dog alone still believed salvation waited in the storm. Suddenly, Rex broke into frantic barks, his voice cutting through the wind like a desperate cry. He lunged toward the ravine, paws digging wildly into a mound of snow. Lucas rushed forward, heart pounding, and dropped to his knees beside him. Beneath Rex's furious digging, a faint hollow appeared. A hand, pale and trembling, emerged. Gasps tore from the rescuers as they clawed at the snow with bare hands. Two bodies lay curled within the cavity, alive but barely breathing. Relief surged through the team, but dread shadowed Lucas's heart. If two were here, where was the third? The two skiers were lifted carefully onto stretchers, their lips too frozen for full sentences. But one weak whisper carried through the storm, another. Below, the words struck like ice. Panic rippled through the team below. The ravine meant certain peril. Darkness was nearly complete. Another hour and visibility would vanish entirely. Lucas's chest tightened. One survivor was still out there, buried somewhere in the merciless white. And every passing minute dragged that unseen life closer to silence. Around him, rescuers exchanged anxious looks. Could they risk it, or was it already too late? The team leader gripped Lucas's shoulder. "We can't go deeper. It's suicide." Others nodded, exhausted, pleading with their eyes for Lucas. To agree, the ravine was steep, its base swallowed by blackness. Lucas's thoughts war retreat meant safety, but it also meant abandoning someone still alive. He turned toward Rex. The dog stood rigid, chest heaving, snow crusting his fur. His amber eyes held steady on Lucas, unyielding, almost human in their plea. The storm howled louder, but in that gaze, Lucas felt clarity. Rex was asking him to believe, to risk everything one more time. Lucas's fingers trembled as he unclipped Rex's leash. Gasps rose from behind him. "Lucas, don't!" Someone shouted, but he had already made his choice. He leaned down, pressed his gloved hand against Rex's neck, and whispered into his ear, "Show me." The dog bounded forward, free at last, vanishing into the storm's belly. Lucas followed without hesitation, heart hammering. Every step was defiance, every breath a gamble against death. Yet, with Rex leading, Lucas felt for the first time in years that he was not walking into darkness alone. A bark rose through. The snow's roar, sharp and insistent. Lucas stumbled downward, sliding against jagged ice until the sound grew near. There, wedged beneath a crumbled ledge, lay a motionless body half buried in snow. And over him stood Rex, pressed firmly against the boy, his fur shielding the skier from the storm's teeth. Rex barked again, but his body never shifted, as if declaring, "I will not leave him." Lucas dropped beside them, throat tightening. The boy was alive, weak, but breathing. And Rex, soaked and shivering, had stayed, choosing loyalty over his own. Safety. The team scrambled to lower ropes, their hands raw from frostbite. Lucas tied the harness around the unconscious boy, signaling the pull. Every tug strained muscles already near collapse. Snow shifted dangerously, threatening to drag them down, but no one let go. Lucas pushed upward with his shoulder, gritting his teeth, lungs burning for air. Rex stayed close, his body pressed against Lucas's leg, a silent pillar of strength. Inch by inch, the boy rose toward safety. Above, the last flare flickered against the storm, its glow dimming to nothing just as the boy's body cleared the ravine's lip. In the darkness, they had done the impossible together. The sky cracked open with the first pale rays of dawn, washing the snow in muted gold. The relentless storm, once a merciless enemy, now softened into silence. Over the ridge, the low thrum of helicopter blades grew louder, a sound that carried the promise of salvation. Lucas shielded his eyes, blinking back tears he didn't know he was holding. After a night of fear and exhaustion, hope finally soared above the mountains. Carried on metal wings, on the ground, chaos gave way to joy. Parents and siblings, who had braved the bitter night waiting, rushed forward as stretchers were lowered. Weak voices croaked names, met with sobs and laughter. Arms wrapped around fragile bodies wrapped in blankets, relief flowing like a flood that washed away despair. The storm had taken its toll, but in this moment, survival triumphed. Gratitude hung heavy in the air, every embrace a prayer answered. Amid the celebration, Lucas's eyes sought one figure. Rex lay in the snow, chest rising unevenly, sides heaving with fatigue. Lucas knelt quickly, brushing frost from the dog's muzzle. "You stubborn soldier." His voice cracked, guilt surfacing after every doubt he had ever cast on Rex. Yet, as weak as Rex seemed, his tail thumped against the snow, wagging with quiet triumph. In that motion, Lucas saw it. Rex wasn't broken. He had given everything. And still, his spirit burned bright. A heavy hand rested on Lucas's shoulder. The rescue chief, weathered and stern, rarely spoke more than duty required. But his voice was unsteady now. "He didn't just save those kids," the chief said, nodding toward Rex. "He saved you too. Make you believe again." Lucas swallowed hard, unable to answer. The weight of the words sank deep into his chest. For the first time, Lucas saw not only a rescuer in Rex but the bridge that had healed something inside him. Later, when the noise of reunion dimmed, Lucas sat in the snow beside Rex, breaking a crust of bread from a ration pack. He held it out, his hand trembling. Rex's eyes, tired but gentle, flicked up before taking the offering. Lucas smiled faintly. "Not as fancy as a medal, but it's yours." As Rex chewed slowly, Lucas realized this was more than sharing food. This was surrender. No longer handler and tool, they were companions bound by trust, tested in fire, sealed in survival. Inside the helicopter, warmth pressed against chilled skin. The rescued skiers dozed under thick blankets, their breath steady at last. Beside them, Rex, curled tightly, his body pressed against theirs like a shield. Even in exhaustion, his head rested across a boy's chest, as though promising, "No harm will touch you. Not while I live." As the helicopter cut through the morning light, Lucas leaned close, his hand brushing Rex's fur. Words he had held back finally found release. "You're more than a rescuer, Rex. You're family." Rex stirred, eyes opening briefly, as though he understood. And in that fleeting glance, Lucas knew this truth. They hadn't just saved lives, they had saved each other. Lucas sat in the hush that followed the rescue, the night's chaos reduced to memory. He thought of his hesitation, the weight of doubt that nearly cost lives. Yet it was trust in Rex, in instinct that had carried them through when reason faltered. That sharp, desperate bark echoed in Lucas's mind. It wasn't noisy, it was a plea, a warning, a command to believe. In that cry lived courage, compassion, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest sound can open the door to salvation. For so long, Lucas had measured strength by proving he could endure without leaning on anyone. Yet Rex shattered that illusion. The dog's loyalty revealed a deeper truth. True strength was not isolation, but trust. It was allowing the bonds were given, unexpected, unearned. yet undeniable to carry us when our own will begins to break. Looking back at Rex, resting yet alert even in exhaustion, Lucas felt humbled. Technology had failed them, reason had wavered, but the heartbeat of a loyal animal had held firm. Salvation had not come through calculation, but through love unspoken, through loyalty that knew no boundary. In that truth lay the lesson he would carry forever, that sometimes the greatest rescuer walks not on two legs, but on four, guided not by training alone, but by the purest devotion.